The bell above the restaurant door rang softly, almost politely, as the old man stepped inside, carrying with him the smell of rain and the weight of a very long life. For a moment, no one noticed him. The restaurant was warm, glowing with soft amber lights that reflected off polished wooden tables and framed photographs of smiling customers on the walls. Laughter floated from a corner booth. Cutlery clinked. A jazz playlist hummed quietly in the background. It was the kind of place people described as classy, the kind that claimed to welcome everyone. The old man paused just inside the doorway. He was black, tall but slightly bent with age, his hair silver and closely cropped, his beard neatly trimmed. He wore a dark coat that had clearly seen many winters, carefully pressed trousers, and polished shoes that were old but clean. In his left hand, he held a folded newspaper. In his right, a worn leather wallet. He looked around, not with uncertainty, but with something deeper. Memory. He had been here before. A young hostess stood behind the counter, scrolling on her phone. She glanced up, her smile starting automatically, then freezing. Her eyes flicked down to his coat, his shoes, his face. The smile disappeared. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice flat. "Yes," the old man said calmly. "A table for one, please." The hostess hesitated, then glanced over her shoulder toward the dining room. Every table was nearly full, but not completely. There were empty seats. Anyone could see that. She sighed. "We're actually fully booked," she said. The old man tilted his head slightly, looking past her at an empty table by the window. "I don't mind waiting," he replied. She shook her head quickly. "There's nothing to wait for. We're full for the night." At that moment, a white couple entered behind him. The hostess turned instantly, her face brightening. "Hi, welcome in," she said cheerfully. "Table for two." The couple nodded. "Right this way," she said, grabbing menus and leading them inside, past the empty table by the window. The old man stepped aside to let them pass. No one looked at him. He stood there for a few seconds, the bell still echoing faintly in the air. Then he cleared his throat. "Miss," he said gently, "I just saw you seat them." She turned back, irritation flashing across her face. "They had a reservation," she said sharply. "I see," the old man replied. "And if I made one?" She stared at him. "Sir," she said, lowering her voice, "this might not be the right place for you." The words landed heavily, though they were spoken softly. Nearby diners began to glance over. A server slowed as she walked past, watching. Someone whispered. The old man nodded slowly, absorbing the sentence as if he had heard it many times before. "What kind of place is it?" he asked. The hostess crossed her arms. "A private establishment. We have standards." The old man smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. "I helped build those standards," he said quietly. She laughed, a short, dismissive sound. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." At that moment, the restaurant manager emerged from the back. He was a man in his early 40s, clean-cut, confident, wearing a tailored suit instead of an apron. He surveyed the scene with practiced ease. "Is there a problem?" he asked. "Yes," the hostess said immediately. "This man is causing a disturbance." The manager looked at the old man for the first time, his eyes scanning him from head to toe in a single, judgmental sweep. "Sir," the manager said, his tone polite but firm, "we're fully booked tonight." The old man met his gaze calmly. "I was just asking for a table," he said. The manager smiled thinly. "We cater to a certain clientele." "And what kind would that be?" the old man asked. There was a brief silence. The manager leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "People who can afford our menu." The old man reached into his coat and slowly pulled out his wallet. He opened it just enough to reveal several neatly folded bills and a black card tucked behind them. "I can afford a meal," he said. The manager didn't even glance at the wallet. "This isn't about money," he said. "It's about atmosphere." Something shifted in the room. A woman at a nearby table frowned. A young waiter clenched his jaw. The hostess looked uneasy but said nothing. The old man nodded again. "I understand," he said. "I'll be going then." He turned toward the door, his movements unhurried, dignified. As he reached for the handle, the manager added, almost as an afterthought, "And don't come back." The bell rang again as the door closed behind him. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The old man stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking through the large glass window at the restaurant interior. He watched the hostess laugh with a customer. He watched plates of food pass by. He watched people enjoy a place that had been built, piece by piece, with decisions he once made. He exhaled slowly. "Not yet," he murmured. That night, the manager poured himself a drink in his office, satisfied. Another problem handled. Another image preserved. He had no idea that the man he had just dismissed wasn't a customer. He was the reason the restaurant existed at all. If you're watching this and you've ever been judged before you were heard, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe, because this story is just getting started. The next morning, the restaurant opened as usual, but something was already moving beneath the surface. Emails were being drafted. Phone calls were being returned. Files that hadn't been touched in years were being opened again. A name long buried in contracts and fine print was about to rise. The old man sat at a small kitchen table in his modest home, sunlight spilling through the window. He stirred his coffee slowly as a younger man across from him reviewed documents. "They refused to serve you?" the younger man asked, disbelief in his voice. "Yes," the old man said calmly. Very confidently. The younger man shook his head. "Do they know?" The old man smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "No," he said, "and that's the most interesting part." He looked down at the papers in front of him, papers bearing the restaurant's name, its ownership structure, and a signature at the bottom. His signature. The rain began again outside, tapping lightly against the glass, as if counting down. The restaurant buzzed with its usual confidence, unaware that its foundation had begun to crack. By noon, every table was filled. The manager walked the floor with practiced pride, greeting regulars by name, laughing loudly, making sure the image of success remained intact. The hostess from the night before stood at her station, posture straight, confidence restored. No one mentioned the old man. In the office upstairs, an email notification chimed. The manager ignored it. Down the street, in a quiet building with no sign on the door, the old man sat across from two attorneys. They were younger than him, sharp-eyed, respectful. A stack of folders lay open between them. "The incident itself is troubling," one attorney said, flipping through pages. "But what's more concerning is the pattern." The old man nodded. "I suspected as much. Multiple complaints over the last 3 years," the other attorney added. "Subtle language. Selective enforcement. No direct slurs, but consistent exclusion." "They thought subtle meant invisible," the old man said. He leaned back slightly, his expression calm, but his eyes carried decades of restraint. "I warned them," he continued. "I warned the board when they wanted a younger face. Someone who didn't understand why this place existed." The attorneys exchanged a glance. "You were very clear in the original agreement," one said. "Cultural inclusion, equal treatment, community respect." "And they signed it," the old man replied. "Every page." Back at the restaurant, a server hurried into the manager's office. "There's a supplier issue," she said. "The seafood delivery didn't arrive." The manager frowned. "That's impossible. They've never missed a delivery." Another notification chimed. Still, he ignored it. At a corner table, a regular customer whispered to her friend, "Did you hear? Apparently, they turned someone away last night." Her friend shrugged. "Probably couldn't afford it." The words floated through the air, unnoticed, unchallenged. By evening, the supplier still hadn't arrived. The head chef grew agitated. Menu items were crossed out. Apologies were offered. "This is bad," the chef muttered. "We can't keep running like this." The manager finally returned to his office and opened his email. The subject line froze him in place. "Notice of review. Ownership compliance audit." His smile vanished. He opened the message, reading faster with every line. Legal language. Contract references. Dates. Clauses he hadn't thought about in years. At the bottom was a name. A name he didn't recognize. Across town, the old man stood in front of a mirror, adjusting his tie. He didn't rush. He never had to. The younger man from the night before stood nearby. "They're starting to feel it," he said. "They should," the old man replied. "Pressure reveals character." He picked up his coat, the same one he had worn to the restaurant. This time, he brushed invisible dust from the sleeve. "I won't raise my voice," he continued. "I won't embarrass them the way they tried to embarrass me." The younger man nodded. "You sure?" The old man smiled faintly. "I'm very sure." At the restaurant, tension crept into the atmosphere. The hostess noticed it first. The manager snapped at staff. Customers complained about delays. A reservation for a private event was suddenly canceled. "What's going on?" The hostess asked a coworker. I don't know, the coworker whispered. But something feels off. That night, the manager sat alone in his office, rereading the email. He searched through old files, scrolling back years, trying to understand how something like this could happen without his knowledge. Then he found it. A contract amendment. A clause buried deep in legal language. Silent ownership. His stomach tightened. No, he whispered. The bell above the restaurant door rang. The manager looked up. Through the office window, he saw a familiar figure step inside. The old man. The hostess stiffened. Sir, I told you. The old man raised a hand gently. I'm not here for a table. The manager stood abruptly, heart pounding. Who is that? He asked. The old man looked up at the office window and met his eyes. And this time he smiled. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. The hostess stood frozen behind the counter, unsure whether to speak or step back. Conversations at nearby tables softened into murmurs as customers sensed the shift in the room, the subtle tension that made forks pause midair. The old man walked forward calmly, each step measured, deliberate, as though the space belonged to him. Because it did. The manager descended the stairs from his office too quickly, straightening his jacket as he moved, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Sir, he said, placing himself between the old man and the dining room. We talked about this last night. Yes, the old man replied evenly. We did. I asked you not to return. And I chose to, the old man said. That's the difference. The manager's jaw tightened. This is private property. The old man nodded. I know. A few diners openly watched now. A server slowed her pace, lingering near the bar. The hostess swallowed hard. The manager lowered his voice. You're making people uncomfortable. The old man glanced around the room. He saw faces pretending not to stare, hands clutching glasses, eyes full of curiosity. Uncomfortable, he repeated. Interesting choice of word. He turned back to the manager. Do you know what made me uncomfortable last night? The manager said nothing. Standing in that doorway, the old man continued. Being told I didn't belong in a place I helped create. The manager laughed nervously. Sir, I don't know who you think you are, but I know exactly who I am. The old man interrupted softly. The interruption silenced the room. He reached into his coat and pulled out a single folded document, placing it gently on the host's stand. Would you mind reading that? He asked. The manager glanced down, irritated. I don't have time for this. Make time, the old man said. You've been living in it. The manager hesitated, then unfolded the paper. His face drained of color. The document was old, yellowed at the edges, but the text was unmistakable. Ownership structure. Investment breakdown. Silent partner designation. At the bottom was a signature. The manager's hands trembled. This isn't possible, he whispered. The old man leaned closer. It's very possible. It's been possible for 27 years. The hostess leaned forward slightly, trying to read the paper. What is that? She asked quietly. The manager snapped the document shut. Go back to work, he barked. She didn't move. The old man turned to her. You did your job as you were taught, he said calmly. That's important to understand. He looked back at the manager. But who taught you? The manager's breathing quickened. This is a misunderstanding. A clerical issue. Is it? The old man asked. Then why did you receive an audit notice this morning? The manager's eyes widened. So you did read the email? The old man said. A murmur rippled through the room. What audit? Someone whispered. The old man raised his voice just enough to carry. An audit triggered by repeated violations of the very agreement that allows this restaurant to exist. The manager tried to regain control. Sir, this is not appropriate. Neither was turning me away, the old man replied. He stepped past the manager and walked into the dining room. No one stopped him. He paused near the center, resting a hand on the back of an empty chair. When I first invested in this place, he began, this building was falling apart. The neighborhood was ignored. Banks wouldn't lend. Investors laughed. Silence filled the room. I believed in this location because I believed in people, he continued. All people. The manager shook his head desperately. You can't do this. I already did, the old man said. A server spoke up, voice trembling. You're saying you own this place? The old man smiled gently. Part of it. Enough of it. The hostess's face paled. The manager stepped forward. This conversation is over. No, the old man said firmly. This conversation is overdue. He turned toward the customers. Last night, I was told this restaurant had standards. Several diners shifted uncomfortably. I agree, the old man said. It should. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen once. Across the room, the manager's phone buzzed. Then again, and again. The manager glanced down, panic rising as notifications stacked one after another. Board members, lawyers, suppliers. The seafood distributor had pulled out. The wine partner had suspended deliveries. The private event cancellation had been only the beginning. The old man watched him calmly. I don't run businesses emotionally, he said. I run them responsibly. The manager's voice cracked. What do you want? The old man considered the question. I want to know, he said slowly, how many people you turned away after me. The manager said nothing. How many people were told they didn't fit the atmosphere? The old man continued. When all they wanted was a meal. A woman at a nearby table lowered her head. The old man straightened. I built this place to prove something, he said. That dignity doesn't have a dress code. He turned toward the door. You'll hear from the board. As he walked out, the bell rang again, but this time it sounded different. Louder, heavier. Outside, cameras were already gathering. A reporter raised a microphone. Sir, she called out. Are you the owner of the restaurant accused of discrimination? The old man stopped. He turned slowly. I'm the man they forgot to recognize, he said. And inside the restaurant, everything began to collapse. By morning, the restaurant's name was everywhere. Screens glowed with headlines. Phones vibrated endlessly. A place once praised for elegance was now whispered about with disbelief. Customers canceled reservations in quiet waves that became a flood. Influencers deleted photos. Sponsors paused partnerships. Inside, the manager sat at his desk, staring at a blank wall. The hostess arrived earlier than she ever had before. She stood at the counter, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the door. When it opened, it wasn't customers who entered. It was lawyers. They moved through the space with calm efficiency, reviewing documents, photographing posted notices, collecting statements. Staff gathered in small clusters, speaking in hushed tones. The manager was summoned to the dining room. The board appeared on a video screen at the bar, faces solemn, voices measured. You violated the agreement, one of them said. You exposed us to risk, said another. You ignored warnings, a third added. The manager tried to defend himself. He spoke about brand image, about clientele, about maintaining standards. Each word made the room colder. Finally, a familiar voice joined the call. The old man's face filled the screen. I warned you, he said quietly. The manager looked up, eyes hollow. Why didn't you tell me who you were? The old man tilted his head. Why didn't you treat me like a human being first? No one spoke. The decision was swift. Termination. License review. Immediate closure pending investigation. The call ended. Silence followed. Staff stared at the floor. The hostess pressed her lips together, fighting tears. The manager removed his jacket slowly, as if the weight of it had finally become too much. He placed it on a chair and walked out without another word. By noon, a notice was taped to the door, closed until further notice. People gathered outside, reading, recording, whispering. Some nodded in approval. Others looked ashamed. Across the street, the old man watched from his car. He didn't smile. He drove away. Days later, a press conference was held in a modest community center. Reporters filled the room. Cameras clicked. Microphones crowded forward. The old man stepped to the podium. This was never about revenge, he said. It was about remembrance. He spoke of the early days, of loans denied, of meetings where his ideas were ignored until someone else repeated them, of choosing silence not out of weakness, but strategy. I stayed hidden so the mission could survive, he said. But silence is not consent. A reporter asked, what happens to the restaurant now? The old man paused. It will reopen, he said, with new leadership, new training, and a renewed promise. Another asked, why now? He looked directly into the camera. Because dignity delayed is dignity denied, he said. Applause filled the room, not loud, but sincere. That evening, the hostess sat at home, scrolling through messages. A new email appeared. Invitation to meet. She read it twice. The next week, the restaurant reopened under a different name. The menu was simpler. The prices fairer. The walls displayed stories of the neighborhood instead of staged photographs. On opening night, the bell rang softly. The old man stepped inside. This time, the hostess smiled. Welcome, she said. Table for one. He nodded. Yes, he said. I think I'll stay a while. The restaurant breathed differently now. Not louder, not quieter, but freer. There was no tension hiding beneath polite smiles, no silent measuring of who belonged and who did not. People came in wearing suits, work boots, worn jackets, bright dresses. No one looked twice. No one needed to. The old man sat near the window, hands folded around a warm cup of tea, watching life unfold inside the space he had once imagined only on paper. A young waiter moved carefully between tables, still learning the rhythm of service. A mother helped her child color on the back of a menu. Two strangers debated politics without anger, only curiosity. This was the atmosphere that had always mattered. The hostess approached slowly, no longer stiff, no longer guarded. Confidence had replaced fear. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yes," the old man said. "Everything is exactly how it should be." She hesitated. "I think about that night a lot." He looked at her, patient. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "That's not an excuse. Just the truth." He nodded. "The truth is where change begins." She smiled faintly and returned to her station. On the wall near the entrance hung a framed document. Not a contract, not an award, a promise. It outlined the values of the restaurant in simple language: respect, inclusion, accountability. It ended with a single sentence written in bold: "No one is invisible here." Customers stopped to read it before being seated. Some nodded, some swallowed, some stayed longer than they planned. Across town, the former manager watched the reopening on his phone. He didn't recognize the place anymore. He closed the screen and sat in silence, confronted not by punishment, but by consequence. Back inside, a community leader stood to speak. No microphone, no stage. "This place," she said, "is proof that listening matters." Applause followed, not loud, but real. The old man didn't stand. He didn't need to. Later, as the night thinned and chairs were stacked, he rose slowly and walked toward the door. Each step felt lighter than the last. At the threshold, he stopped. For years, doors had closed in his face without explanation. Tonight, this one waited. He turned back one final time, his eyes tracing the room, the people, the possibility. "Take care of it," he said softly. "We will," someone replied. The bell rang as he stepped outside. The sound no longer echoed. It settled. He walked into the night, not as an owner, not as a symbol, but as a man who had seen something broken made whole. And the lesson remained. Racism doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it hides behind words like standards and atmosphere and tradition. But dignity has a way of outlasting all of it. So before you judge, look again. Before you dismiss, listen. Before you decide who belongs, remember this story. Because respect costs nothing, but the absence of it can cost everything.